Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Line Change, the NHL betting podcast from the Action Network. My name is Michael Leboff, and joining me for this, our preview for Thursday, October the 10th, 8-game NHL slate is Nick Martin. And Nick, with 8 games on the schedule for Thursday night, we can finally start a show with our favorite segment, Underdogs, our favorite underdog on the slate. Both of us are on the same one here, so I'll let you get it started.
Yeah, I like the Columbus Blue Jackets in this matchup. This number stood out right away to me when I looked at the prices that came out like 2 weeks ago. And that's as someone who likes the Wild, or at least about as much as the betting market does. But I just think that Columbus could be a team that kind of comes out of the gate and sneaks up on people a little bit this year. I still like a lot of the young talent they have there. As I've talked about a lot on the show last season, I thought Vincent did a really terrible job the way that he was rotating guys in and out of the lineup, up and down every line. No one had any defined roles. Power play never had any continuity. So I think there is a lot to like about the Blue Jackets coming out this season and maybe being one of these scrappy groups that we see have a good first 10 games, kind of catching some teams off guard. So when I look at this, just opening night, this kind of a number, I think plus 195, we're getting a really good number to take a shot with the Blue Jackets kind of being surprisingly good early on, or at least surprisingly competitive. So I'm not seeing this one as a blowout. I don't think it's going to look like this number suggests. I think the Blue Jackets can skate with them and hopefully make it competitive.
Yep, with you 100%. We're on board here to start the show. I think that this number, to me, like when I was going through just jotting down the notes for the show, the one that I think if I had to pick one bet to make for the entire program, it would be Columbus at this pricing. It's a Wild team that I am not too convinced about at all. So Columbus for both of us as our favorite dog to start. We'll keep it there. So Columbus for us to start is our favorite dog, and from there we'll move on to the rest of the board. That brings us to the Florida Panthers and the Ottawa Senators. Florida is a minus 130 favorite on the road. Ottawa plus 110, total 6.5. I do think Florida's performance against Boston probably slowed a lot of people down who wanted to bet Ottawa in this spot as a home dog, because of they were really, really good against Boston in that banner raising game. They looked like the same team that it was like game 8 of the Stanley Cup final. Basically, it was incredible to watch them just kind of maul the Bruins, and we'll see if they could just keep that form going. We did see this from Vegas last year, like right out of the gates after winning the Stanley Cup. They kind of just rode the wave for the first 6 weeks of the season or so. Wouldn't be shocked if Florida does that too. That said, I did want to bet Ottawa here. I think we're both in the same boat, like just a little scared.
Yeah, I wanted to bet Ottawa here, but when you see that kind of a performance from Florida, and yeah, like we're high on the Senators as a team that could bounce back and finally live up to expectations, but they're getting quite a bit of credit when you look at they're currently priced at plus 110. So with that in mind, like that is a lot of credit that Ottawa will be like finally live up to expectations this season. Florida's got one game under their belt here and they looked really good. So, maybe you'd be saying it could be a bit of a letdown spot for them, but I don't think that's enough. Yeah, I feel like you're kind of having to talk your way into it to take the Sens at this price.
Yeah, I think that's well said. That brings us to Los Angeles and Buffalo. This one in Buffalo, the Kings are minus 118 road favorites. Buffalo minus 102. The total is 6.5. Not too dissimilar from what we just talked about. Like the Sabres as a slight home dog, I do think looks okay. There's just a couple things at work here that are keeping me off this game entirely. One is that Buffalo is traveling back from Europe. They did play. I mean, they played on Saturday in Czechia, so they had a couple days to get used to it. But you are over there for a week or plus. They were there for quite a bit, and then they came back, and there's definitely something to be said about that. Plus, they just were pretty flat, and that's very concerning because there's maybe one other team, the Detroit Red Wings, that I could argue needed a better start or a hot start more than Buffalo this season. So to see them come out with those two efforts against New Jersey, and full credit to the Devils, that we've been talking about how the ice in that building didn't look good either. So it was a little bit of like a haphazard game. I will say the one silver lining for the Sabres was that Devon Levi looked really good, and and I'm starting to really believe in him more. It's like he could. I've heard Kevin Woodley talk about this too, as like a guy who could just be vault himself to one of the top goalies in the league if given the opportunity, and Buffalo shapens up on defense. But aside from that, like same thing. I would want to bet Buffalo in a vacuum here, but I'm just happily going to pass on it.
Yeah, I agree. I won't be surprised if the Kings become a little trendy here because the Sabres just looked so pathetic in those 2 games in Europe. But I think that the Devils still should prove to be one of the best teams in the league, like we've been saying. The ice was horrible. Those Europe games are always kind of a bit of a crapshoot, anyways. So I don't want to fully write off the Sabres here, maybe bouncing back at home. And then the one that we've talked about, I'm kind of interested in Brandt Clark props this season as he takes over kind of the Drew Doughty roles, but those are also not out yet, or at least his numbers aren't out yet. So keep your eye out for me in the app there. I'm hoping he could be one of these defensive goal scorers that's like 10-1, but it's a bit of a guessing game to see whether the odds makers will be onto that one or not.
That brings us to Detroit and Pittsburgh. We're recording this on Wednesday afternoon, so Pittsburgh has not played the Rangers yet in Pittsburgh. Then they travel to Detroit for a short road trip or short travel time. The Penguins are plus 110 on the road. Detroit minus 132. Total 6.5. I would lean towards Detroit minus 130 or better. I have a lot of concerns about both of these teams. I don't think there's all that much of a gap between them. So when you consider home ice and the Penguins playing the night before, I think all of that you can start to get to a bet on Detroit and feel pretty good about it. I would like to see what Pittsburgh does out of the gates here against the Rangers first. But one bet I am going to look at is Eric Gustafsson to get on the board running that top power play unit, which should be pretty good with Patrick Kane, Larkin, Lucas Raymond. So if he is truly going to be that number one guy on Detroit's PP1, I think Gustafsson's fine as an anytime goal scorer, sort of in the same vein you were just saying about Brandt Clark. If he's up there and the high single digits, which I expect him to be as an anytime goal scorer. So Gustafsson would be the play, my favorite play of this game, with like a slight temptation to bet Detroit.
Yeah, and I do think the over is a not bad play in this game. I'm passing given there's quite a bit I like on this slate, but I wouldn't be surprised to see this one be kind of a shootout and just a bit of an ugly defensive game. I still think Detroit's going to be fairly bad defensively. Their goaltending situation looks concerning, but I think they could definitely catch the Pens here. So I think the over will be a trendy play. I definitely wouldn't talk anyone out of that. So that kind of works in favor of your Gustafsson bet there as well. And yeah, I think that should be one of the most popular plays on the slate. We'll see. It should be a really good game.
That brings us to Montreal and Boston. This one in Boston. Once again, noting that we are recording this before Montreal plays Toronto on Wednesday night. The Habs are plus 190-ish against the Bruins already. Boston minus 220. The total 6.5. Boston was overwhelmed by Florida. I don't look at that as like some sort of massive red flag for the Bruins going forward, other than maybe, hey, it just takes this team with some changes coming in into key parts of the lineup some time, plus obviously the Jeremy Swayman situation with Korpisalo playing in goal. I don't know if he's going to win the Vezina Trophy anymore, so just keep that in mind.
I think his stats are already too bad to get it.
Yeah. I like Montreal here, though. Even I'm probably going to wait to see what happens with Toronto and the game in Toronto, but I think that this number is fine. I think it's gonna take some time for the Bruins to get their legs under them with a lot of new, or I should say, significant key pieces into the lineup. The bottom six maybe isn't where it should be yet. If you're talking about a contending team, plus like whether it's Korpisalo or Swayman, I think the goaltending situation is not yet settled, right? Like Swayman's going to take some time before he gets into game shape. I know he's been practicing with the BU Terriers during his little contract dispute, but he didn't play one preseason game. He got signed on Sunday. So if it is Swayman, happy to go against Jeremy Swayman in this situation. Usually I don't want to bet against him, but in this unique circumstance, it's fine. Or if it's Korpisalo, it's fine. So I know that the goaltending situation for the Habs could be a pretty big question mark too with Montembeault going on Wednesday night, but I think the number's just big enough here to take a shot on the Habs against the Bruins.
Yeah, I lean with Montreal. I like the number. As I've noted on this show, I don't think Boston's going to be that good of an offensive team at all this season. I'm looking at how they closed out last year and what they have left this season, and I'm just not seeing this as a top offense in the East. So that definitely works in favor of taking your shot with the Canadiens at their long number. I just feel like I kind of hate the spot a little bit after the Bruins got smoked in that. And now you come home for your home opener against a Canadiens team that's playing the Leafs tonight. So that kind of scares me off it a little bit. But I also just feel like I just don't know if Boston has the offensive upside to blow teams out of the water the way you're kind of hoping they would, given that number. So yeah, that's kind of how I arrive on just passing on this one.
Okay, that brings us to the headliner. Utah Hockey Club makes its first trip to Long Island. They're plus 130. The Isle sitting minus 156. Total here is 5.5. It's kind of nudging towards 6. I will be in the building for this one, so adjust your numbers accordingly. I do think that if you were to bet this one at like straight up money line, at this point the Islanders have taken money. I think there's now some value on Utah. I do have a couple of props I like. I'm not gonna. I keep talking about Max Siplikov, and I think that he's just in a really good spot in the lineup to pay off at better at the numbers that he's going to be dealt for anytime goal scorers. I'm seeing plus 300. He's going to be in front of the net, that net front presence on power play 1. He's playing with Nelson and Palmieri on the second line, so he's going to get every opportunity. He's going to get some serious ice time. And I also like Kyle McLean as a long shot. Like you need closer to like 8-1. You and I joked after his second game, I think the Islanders played the Panthers. Like, what is this guy doing in the NHL? And if you look at he is one of the most peculiar players ever. Because if you look at his prospect like numbers when he was playing in junior, and then when he was playing in the ECHL and AHL, he was never even close to a point per game until his one. I think he had one really good season as an OHL overager, and then everything else has just been really just kind of pedestrian. And then he gets called up. His dad is the assistant coach on the Islanders, John McLean. So you wonder, like, are they just doing that because he'll be a pretty responsible fourth line player? But he showed some offensive chops last year, and he showed him again in the preseason. And I do think he's someone who's going to like incrementally work his way up the lineup. So as a long shot, I actually like Kyle McLean as another anytime goal scorer. So Siplikov, McLean. I'm going to play something with those two guys, or one or the other, as I walk into the building tomorrow. But I think you're here to tell us, like I said, that Utah is probably the right way to go here.
Yeah, I lean with Utah, but I don't know. I didn't really have a lot. So far, the hockey club has been the only team and their players not to let me down, because Gunther went out there and had a good night too, and we've been talking him up a ton, and Keller as well. So I like Utah. We've talked about a lot on this show. I think that they're gonna overachieve expectations, and really get in that wild card hunt, just like we thought last year. So at this kind of a number, when we've already seen them have a really strong showing, obviously I'd be leaning there. And I wouldn't hate just going right back to Gunther goal, but as you've said, the lines for the goal scorers have dropped off while we record. But if he's out at plus 220 again, I would go back to that. I just think he's going to be filling the net all year long. He looked great. He's got such a great shot, better rolls. I think that power play is still going to be really good. So I'm just going to keep riding him kind of until the numbers start to come down a lot more, I think.
Yeah, the Islanders had the worst power play in the league. Worst penalty kill in the league last year. So if that doesn't improve, could be a good spot there for him. As far as the total, I know you like the other way. I would look at the under. I think that these two teams, for some reason, like when they match up, one of the two games in each of the last two seasons has been, one was 1-0 Islanders, and then one was 2-0 Islanders, and the other one the season before there was like a 1-0 for their Coyotes. So they just have a way to kind of like nullify each other with the way they play. But I think I'm gonna rather play the anytime goal scorers with Siplikov and McLean, and build around that. And just a hunch. This is just a complete hunch. Bo Horvat scores the first goal of the game. I just think that I've just already seen the goal. I see myself in the building, and I see Bo Horvat scoring already. So get ready for that. That brings us to Stars and Predators. This one in Nashville, essentially a pick 'em. Stars slight favorite right now, -114. Predators -105. Total 6.5. I like Dallas here. I'm going to be betting against Nashville quite a bit. I think, especially in the early going. But I just think Dallas is a better team and deeper start to front on their roster. Who knows? I think both of these goaltenders actually are sneaky question marks off of what we saw last season. Ottinger and Saros, they both, of course, have significant upside, but weren't exactly setting the world on fire last year. But I do think that just generally we're going to see a lot of people looking to bet Nashville and seeing them as a slight home underdog with Stamkos and Marchessault and Shea. The excitement that they brought with the way they closed last year. But they're playing a behemoth here. They're playing one of the Stanley Cup favorites. So I like Dallas here. I wouldn't go much further than -115 though.
Yeah, I thought there was enough value for a half unit play at -105. So I'm kind of right with you. I am low on the Predators. I don't think Stamkos and Marchessault will drive play in the right direction that much, and I'm quite low on Shea. So, yeah, like when you're playing a team like Dallas here, it feels like a ton of market respect. I think your home ice advantage is probably a little nullified for the first game of the season as well, because I think generally home ice advantages kind of revolve around travel and spots like that. I'm not that high on the Stars either, like relative to their crazy prices in the markets, because I think Dumba and Labushkin on the right side is a problem. But in this spot, I will take them on because I still think what they have left is a lot better than what the Predators have left. And then the other interesting note, Saros is day to day. Obviously, like we've said, we're recording Wednesday, so we won't know what happens with that. I wouldn't be surprised if this ends up being a thing where if he sits, there's too much market overreaction. Like, I actually think, as bad as he was last year, I wouldn't, and like if he sits, I wouldn't be taking on the Stars at like -130 or -125 just because it moved to that point. Everyone thinks, oh, they don't have Saros, they're in a world of trouble. So I'll kind of put that out there. But yeah, I'm right with you on the Stars here.
Okay. We touched on the Blue Jackets as our favorite underdog, but you had another play here that you wanted to highlight. Like I said, they're +190 in Minnesota. The Wild -235 total here, 6.5. But you got a prop that you want to play.
Yes, I will. Yeah, I guess now that I see what you're doing here, I think that getting on the Adam Fantilli train here he's +145 to get a prop or to get a point. I like that. I think he's gonna have a big year. He looked really good. He was really just clicking before he got that cut on his leg, and then went back out of the lineup. So, I think that he could have a really big season. I think this prop is just going to prove to be kind of an early season number by the time we get 40 games into this. So I want to buy on him on opening night.
Okay. And that will bring us to our favorite bets for the evening. I'll go first. I like the Toronto Maple Leafs at +120 against the Devils. Devils -144 at home. Total 6.5 here. There's a lot of question marks with the Maple Leafs goaltending situation now. Joseph Woll has got a lower body element, so he won't play in Montreal or against Montreal. And then they travel to New Jersey. It was expected that Solars would play. He's from New Jersey, but with the Woll situation, that gets diced up a bit. I actually like this bet quite a bit because the Devils are coming back from Europe. They looked great. I understand that, and we are expecting them to be really good. But I do think that the market could overreact to that, and I think the market could overreact to the fact that we might see Dennis Hildeby play in this game, and this number could get bigger. The Leafs, it was funny. Like we always joke about them and their reputation, but when they are a bunch where things start to go wrong or players come out of the lineup, they do step their game up quite a bit, or at least they did last year and the year before that with defensive injuries or goaltenders coming out of the lineup. And Hildeby is, by all accounts, on his way to being an NHL goaltender. He's a big guy. So if there is some overreaction here, I think that there's even going to be more value here. And I just want to go against the Devils a bit because I think we could see the market get a little carried away with the way they looked in Europe. Plus, they're traveling. This is a tough situation traveling back from the Czech Republic after spending quite a bit of time there. And now you're playing a good team. This is a team that's basically got similar expectations to you at the top of the betting board. So I like Toronto, hoping to get an even bigger number when all this news settles and people start betting into the Devils. What do you have here?
Yeah, I didn't have much. I lean with the over. It's out there right now at -115 to go over 6.5. I think that's a reasonable play. I think once Hildeby ends up announced, that'll probably move. And like you said with the Leafs too, probably the same thing. But I didn't really actually have much interest in either side at the prices.
And your best bet will come in the nightcap or the latest game on the night. That is San Jose hosting St. Louis. The Blues beat the Kraken 3-2. They now travel to the Shark Tank to take on Macklin Celebrini and the Sharks. This totals 5.5. Blues sitting at -166. Sharks +138. I'm not as convinced as you on a bet for this game, but I will note that I like the Sharks, and I might get there on playing them, just going against what we saw from the Blues and just our general expectations of them. But your favorite bet of the night comes in this game.
Yeah, I also lean with the Sharks fairly heavily, but the one reason that the Blues were able to steal that first game was just peak Blues hockey. All the defenders that we thought were going to be bad looked horrible, and at times it felt like, how are they in this game? But early on, even before he had scored, obviously he hit the post. I thought that Kyrou and Thomas looked really dangerous when Buchnevich was out there with them. He looked really good as well. It felt like it was going to be that line if the Blues broke through or nothing. And obviously Kyrou came through with he was unreal. He stood out all night, could have easily had a hat trick. He had the 2 goals. And I'm kind of just looking at it. It's chalky, but -140 for him to record a point in this game really stood out to me. Given the way they looked on opening night, I think he's legitimately just like, this is a point per game guy that I want to keep buying on. That top line was excellent. I don't see them running away with this game. I think they're going to need to use that line a lot again because like I said, I think San Jose can actually fare pretty well the rest of the time. So I'm going to just keep it chalky and go with Kyrou to get 1 point at -140 in a good matchup versus the Sharks.
All right, that does it for our first full week of line change. Just a recap, our favorite underdog for Thursday night. We both like the Columbus Blue Jackets against the Minnesota Wild. Our best bets came in on the Toronto Maple Leafs for me, but I do think you can probably wait a little bit as the market overreacts to the goaltending switch, and Nick likes Jordan Kyrou to get a point at -140. And that'll do it for us this week. We will be back again for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday next week. We'll try to rotate in some guests here and there as well. Until then, best of luck with all your bets over on Thursday night and over the weekend, and we'll see you again next week.